Okay. Good afternoon, yogis. Taking a moment to find our seats. Beginning our Mindful Mondays, Motivation Mondays, Inspiration Mondays by beginning our meditative practice, softening the shoulders, closing the eyes, bringing one palm on top of the other and allowing the thumbs to come together. Take our first communal breath together. Inhale through the nose. Holding the breath at the top, inhale some more. And slowly exhale. Making some noise with the breath out, sighing it out. Taking a deep breath in, inhaling this Monday afternoon. Holding at the top, inhale a little bit more this time. And an audible release. Last one, just like that. Breath in through the nose, we fill up. Belly expands, heart expands. Shoulders soften. Holding the breath at the top as you inhale some more. Release. From here, we seal the lips, taking a breath in through the nose. And we follow the breath out of the nose. Allowing the eyelids to soften, allowing the body to soften. And then for today's practice, we become aware of the space in our environment. Notice the space that you're occupying. Whether you're driving or at work or currently sitting in your cushion and your seats. Just notice where you're at. Gently opening the eyes for today's meditation and finding something in front of you, at least 4 to 5 feet away, maybe further. It could be a wall, it could be literally anything in your view. Take a few moments just to notice the distance between you and the object of your meditation today. And once you find that, just breathing into that space. Just like we did during our yoga class this morning and throughout our practice and our time together, we are accustomed to breathing into the sensations of the body. Now we breathe into the literal space outside of the body between you and the object of your meditation. Relaxing the jaw, softening the eyes. And then finding that object sitting a little bit taller. Just breathing into that space. Notice if your eyes are fluttering around or looking all over the place. Keep the eyes focused. Just one pin drop, one space in your awareness, in your visual awareness. Today we experiment with maintaining the eyes open during our meditation. Just taking a moment to close the eyes, allowing the eyes to rest, resetting our visual field. And just noticing any changes in your body, any changes in the sensations that you're experiencing. Notice any streams of light in the back of your eyelids. Now, in just a moment, for the last couple of minutes of our practice, we're going to open our eyes once again. You will find an object, can be the same object, something directly in front of you, about eyes height from where you are at. We will keep our eyes open, and as best as possible, we'll do what we can to not blink and not move. Keeping the eyes open, keeping the eyes fixed in the object of our meditation. Slow and steady breath. Gently open the eyes, find the object of your meditation, and when it's time, I will guide you through. Closing the eyes, taking a deep breath into the nose. Exhale, 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 belly in towards the spine, squeezing all the air out of the body. Holding completely empty. Breath in through the nose. Release. We're going to enhance the prayer by our heart. We seal our meditation today by chanting Om together. Deep breath in to prepare for our chant. Hands to the third eye center, the space in between the eyebrows. Loka samasta sukhi no bhavantu. May all the beings in all the realms be happy, be free. And today, may your thoughts, your words, and your actions fall into perfect alignment for your liberation. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me and us for today's class, Mindful Mondays. It's important when we practice our meditation in the spirit of furthering ourselves and pushing ourselves. We repeat things and we do things in a certain way, and we do that over and over and over again. We do that with our yoga classes, with our asana movements. We develop a proper form and framework for understanding the practice, but we have to allow the practice to also change and give ourselves permission to do something a little different. So if you always practice with the eyes closed, notice if when you meditate with the eyes open, if there's an attachment to closing the eyes, there's a desire for it to look or feel a certain way. So when we focus our attention in a single object, our thoughts are connected with the movement of our eyes. So developing the capacity to keep the eyes still. Sometimes with the eyes closed, because our visual field is completely removed, it's harder to tell if the eyes are moving or not. So keeping the eyes open and finding a fixed object of our meditation makes it easy for us to develop the capacity to find stillness in our visual field, and then increasing the capacity of what the meditation can be, learning how to meditate throughout the day, rather than always having to find a set posture and a set fixed gaze internally. So thank you all for joining me for that. And I will be passing the mic to our teacher.
Hello, everyone. Today, we gather to dive together into the profound wisdom of the Buddha, exploring the second and third noble truths. Last week, we went over the first noble truth. Hi, Christine. Hi, Joaquin. And hi, Gabriel. So yes, again, we went over the first noble truth last week, and actually we did talk about the second noble truth as well. So these truths are essential once again to understanding the Buddhist path and how we can navigate our lives with mindfulness and compassion. So let's do a quick review of the first noble truth. All existence is dukkha, also known as life is suffering. So the word dukkha is a Sanskrit word that has been translated in various ways: suffering, anguish, pain, or unsatisfactoriness as being the most popular translations. But it encompasses much more than just physical and emotional pain. It refers to the fundamental unsatisfactoriness and impermanence of life, the subtle sense of unease that pervades all forms of existence, something along the lines of existentialism. But we also talked about why we suffer: old age, illness, and death. The deterioration of our physical form that also leads to suffering by simply being in this body. And so the Buddha's insight was that our lives, our very existence, is a struggle, and that without training, with a ignorant mind, we will find unhappiness and unsatisfactoriness in our day-to-day experience. And then that is the problem of existence. And then although we didn't name it as such in our last class, we actually talked about the cause of dukkha or suffering. And we talked about craving, attachments. The natural human tendency is to blame our difficulties on the things outside of ourselves. But the Buddha says that the actual root of suffering is found to be in the mind where we have attachments, the mind where we grasp, or alternatively push them away, which fundamentally places us at odds with the way life really is. The fact that we are not able to accept life as it is the source of our suffering. And then beyond that, it's our ignorance of suffering itself, our ignorance of who we really are, why we're born. All these different things lead us to question why we're here. And without those answers, we can lead ourselves into a world of illusion, distortion, and get further and further away from the truth. Hi, Sasha. Welcome. Okay, so now that we did a little review of our last class, I'd love to read you a story. Please close your eyes and listen to my voice. Long ago, the Buddha was teaching his disciples about the nature of suffering and its causes. Among the disciples was a young monk who was deeply unhappy. The disciple sought the counsel of the Buddha, who agreed to help, but only if the disciple would undertake a journey. The Buddha gave the young monk a special task. He handed him a bowl filled with oil, filled to the very brim, and instructed him to walk around the monastery compound, around the forest, without spilling a single drop. The Buddha explained, this bowl is like your mind. The oil is like your desires and attachments. You must carry them carefully, or they will spill over, causing suffering. And so the young monk walked with his bowl of oil. And as he walked, he encountered various distractions, beautiful flowers, melodious birds, and even his fellow monks engaged in deep study and joyful conversation. However, the monk was so focused on not spilling the oil, his attachments, that he failed to appreciate or even notice these joys. Upon his return, the Buddha asked, did you enjoy the beauty of the gardens? Did you hear the birds singing and exchange smiles with your fellow monks? And the monk replied, no, I did not. I was too focused on not spilling the oil. The Buddha nodded and said, like the oil in the bowl, when your mind is filled to the brim with desires and attachments, there is no room to experience the beauty and joy that life offers. Your fear of losing what you are attached to has blinded you to the richness of the world around you. This is the origin of suffering, attachment, and desire. To understand and overcome suffering, you must learn to carry your desires lightly and be mindful of the present moment, appreciating the world in its fullness. We'll take a moment to simply experience our experience upon hearing this story. Softly opening the eyes if your eyes are closed. Coming back into this space, our Mindful Monday. I'm curious to hear from you. What came up as you heard this story? And if you're not able to share, please feel free to type it in the chat.
I have something I could say. So that, so I realized, I was so attached to my partner in making sure that I kept like giving to him. And I was so focused on him that I forgot about how much I enjoyed my family and just being by myself and making art and all the things that I love doing. And so I was missing out on everything. Yeah, so that's it, I guess.
Thank you, Shasha, for sharing. Yeah, you're describing something very human, something very real. I think many of us have experienced relationships that are so like captivating and so encompassing that our partner becomes our whole life. And in our attachment to our partner, like you were describing, everything kind of starts fading away. Like what you're recognizing in this moment of your connection with your family, your love for art, your time to just be with yourself and experience yourself. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's a very, very natural thing. And I think love in particular, romance in particular, is a great example because it is so, again, captivating. And attachments are even more so, right? Because of the feelings that we have. So I really appreciate you sharing that very real life example. Hi, Alexis, welcome. We're talking about the second noble truth today. And so much like what Sasha bravely shared with us and like the story, this is the essence of the second noble truth. The Buddha taught that the origin of our suffering is attachment, desire, and ignorance. Our cravings and desires, much like the fixation on the oil and not spilling it, can blind us from the richness of our experience. We cling to our wants, fears, and misconceptions, and it's this clinging that leads us to feel this suffering again and again. And so this ignorance that keeps us trapped in the cycle of craving is actually the manifestation of a distracted or untrained mind. In our current state of stress and compulsive habitual behavior, we're capable actually of achieving insight into the true nature of reality. So the second noble truth in many ways, and the first, are just laying out the way of the land, right? Instead of speculating on what could be, we start with the fundamental truths. Life is suffering. We all experience old age, illness, and death. Why do we suffer? We suffer because of, again, desire, attachment, and ignorance. So by understanding the lay of the land, then we can find a way, which leads us to the third noble truth. So if our own mistaken mind is the cause of our suffering, it is also the cure. By stabilizing the mind and developing wisdom, we can sidestep the cycles that we habitually go into like a hamster in a wheel and let go. Whether we are attaching to some things or avoiding others, we can then bring to an end this insatiable habit of clinging and avoidance. So a little prompt for your contemplation. You can simply contemplate on it or even write it down as a thought exercise. Reflect on a moment when your desires or attachments intensified your experience of dukkha or suffering. Reflect on a moment when your desires or attachments intensified your experience of dukkha or suffering. How did you respond to that situation? How did you respond to that situation? Is anything coming up for anyone as I'm asking this question? I can give you an example. It's something that I think all of us have experienced at one point. Now, remember a time when you were about 2 or 3 years old. You're at the grocery store with a guardian of some kind, whether a babysitter, a parent, grandparent, and you're about to check out. And your 2, 3-year-old mind notices something really sweet right before that checkout line. All those candy bars, all those shiny things that look fun, that look yummy. And then we ask our mom or dad or our guardian or whoever is with us, hey, can I have this? And they say no. And then the child goes into a tantrum. A tantrum, in many ways, is something that even adults experience when we don't get what we want. And this is the experience of dukkha in our lives. And so that's one easy example, but I think as adults, things get a little bit more complicated. It's not just the candy bar that we're tantruming about. We tantrum with great suffering because we don't have enough money or we don't have the life that we want. We're not living in the place that we want. We don't like our job. Whatever it is, it's because we do not have what we desire or we do not have what we attach to. And then when things change, then we suffer once again. It's just a more complex form of the inner child that tantrums. It is a habitual tendency that we can overcome. So the Buddha's teachings do not leave us in despair. Understanding the cause of suffering is the very first step towards its cessation. This brings us to the third noble truth, the promise of liberation and peace. The third noble truth is not just about understanding Nirodha, but experiencing it. Nirodha is the cessation of craving, of attachment and desire. This leads us to a state that we call Nirvana. Nirvana, a state of liberation from freedom a state of liberation and freedom from suffering. And I'll write this down in the chat. Nirodha, Nirodha, which is the cessation of suffering, in the chat here. And then Nirvana, Nirvana, which is the state of liberation and freedom from suffering. So Nirvana is a word you've probably heard of. There's a famous band that we love. The name has been around and it is often misunderstood. It is often understood as a kind of heavenly realm, something that's related to like Christian thinking of heaven, but it's actually something else. It is heaven in the mind, meaning that it is a state of being that is free from attachments, desires, and ignorance. It is a state of profound peace and contentment that arises from letting go. So the third noble truth says, yes, life is suffering, and this is the root of suffering, and there is a way out. The fourth noble truth is the path that leads us there. And so instead of placing the blame on suffering, on things that are outside of us, our causes, our conditions, the Buddha throws the responsibility back on each one of us, because the mind is where suffering arises. And because we have access to train the mind, we then become our own medicine to be free from suffering. And the path. The fourth noble truth also leads us to another set of lists. As I mentioned, the Buddhists love lists. And we go into the eightfold path. So let me just summarize something really quick. The fourth noble truth presents us with the precise map that leads us to the end of suffering. However, again, it is not the map itself which frees us. It's by taking action and following the map that we create the causes and conditions for our own awakening or nirvana. And the map that the Buddha presented is what we call the Noble Eightfold Path, otherwise known as Arya Ashtanga Mārga. You might hear a familiar word there, Arya Ashtanga Mārga. Mārga meaning path, like Yoga Mārga, the name of our school, the path of yoga. And here we have the Eightfold Noble Path. And if I could just summarize it quickly, it's essentially advice from the Buddha to us to live ethically, to meditate and develop wisdom, and do so by living our life and by practicing. We've spent the entirety of our lives triggered by the causes and conditions that lead us to pain. And to end this, we devote ourselves to the right view, the first eightfold path, the right intention, right speech, right behavior, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now, you might have noticed that I say a lot of the word right here. And the reason why the Buddha says right view, right intention, all these different things, is because the right view is actually referencing the Four Noble Truths and also how we even approach these behaviors with the truth in mind. Okay, I'll pause here for a second. I see that Joaquin has a question. Oh, Joaquin, you are still muted, my love.
Oh, sorry.
No
Hi.
worries.
Okay, that was a lot. Thank you. Can you restate all of the rights again, the list of the 8
Yes,
rights?
absolutely. Yeah. And just so you know, I don't, I want you all to know that we're going to actually spend an entire class covering the 8 noble paths.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this
Okay,
is kind of
cool.
like a preview for what's to come. And I know
Okay.
it's quite a bit. So let's just take it one bite size at a time.
Okay. I like that.
But yeah. And so, but to answer your question, I'll go ahead and summarize the 8-fold path again. We have a right view, the right view. So the perspective, the right perspective. The second, we have the right intention. Third, we have right speech. Fourth, right behavior. Fifth, right livelihood. Next, right effort. Right mindfulness. And lastly, right concentration. I hope that helped. And we'll definitely go into all of this because as you can see, this is a holistic perspective on how one can even conduct their lives day-to-day basis. And which is why our Yoga Mārga program, Yoga Path Mastery, includes a holistic perspective also. We have on Fridays the yoga of communication, which speaks to the right speech component of the 8-fold path. We have the right view, the right intention, the right mindfulness and concentration, which is something that we talk about here on Mindful Mondays, how to train the mind. And then on Wednesdays, we have Embodied Wednesdays, right? So we're talking about right effort, right behavior, right livelihood as a way to, again, engage with life as a spiritual practice. And so if I could summarize the 4 noble truths, they are known as what we call the Dharma. The Dharma. The Dharma is another key term to keep in mind. And I know I'm sharing a lot of Sanskrit terms right now, but these are going to get more and more familiar and natural as we continue to explore. So from the Buddhist perspective, the Dharma is considered to be the teachings of the Buddha. And you might have heard the word Dharma in other contexts. Like as an example, in Hinduism, Dharma is often brought up as a quality that is inseparable from the object. What does that mean? So Dharma of sugar is to be sweet. Without sweetness, sugar is no longer sugar, right? And so Dharma, kind of like what the Buddha talks about in the Eightfold Noble Path, which is right livelihood, is about one's life purpose, one's quality. So some say that the Dharma of human beings is service. Service. Now, why is that? Right? So one of my favorite teachers, Dr. David Wolf, says that whether we are in service to our tongues, to our genitals, to our sense organs, we are always in service to something. Whether we are in service to ourselves or others, we cannot separate service from our human being. But as you can hear, there are some ways that we can be of service that are detrimental to us and others. And then there are ways of service that are helpful. And so we come back once again to the Eightfold Noble Path to find that right view, the right behavior, so that we can continue to clear and cleanse our karma being the cycle of suffering, and transcend into nirvana. Now, does this make sense for everyone so far? I know I'm going through a lot all at once. Okay, great.
It's
I'm seeing some
beautiful.
nods.
I can't wait until we go through all of the 8 in the specific order that it's in, and as
Yeah.
to why.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have a question?
just to reiterate, so the first noble truth is dukkha.
Mm-hmm.
The second noble truth is nirodha,
Mm-hmm.
cessation of suffering. Is that where we wrote? Is that where I wrote my
Oh.
experience?
Actually, I would love to make a slight adjustment. The
Okay.
first noble truth is that life is suffering, right? Existence is dukkha.
Existence is dukkha.
Mm-hmm. The second noble truth is the cause of dukkha.
Yes.
So, which is
The
desire,
attachment,
and ignorance. Correct.
desire, attachment, and ignorance.
Yes. And now the third noble truth is nirodha, the cessation of suffering. Otherwise known as cessation of suffering is possible. So if I could reword all 3 so far, I would say life is suffering, suffering is caused by XYZ, and there is a way out. And then the fourth noble truth is the path toward awakening, or the path away from suffering.
Okay, so in Sanskrit, it's life is suffering, which is dukkha. Dukkha is existence.
Mm-hmm.
Then suffering is caused by cessation of suffering, the desire, attachment, and ignorance.
Yeah, so second
That's
one
2.
is simply the cause of suffering is desire, attachment, and ignorance.
Okay. Is there a Sanskrit word for this?
Oh yeah, lots of Sanskrit words. So let's see. We have, let's look this up for you. I want to look up the specific wording that the Buddha used. Yes. Okay. So it's viparinama dukkha, which means that, and I'll type this for you so everyone has the spelling, is the suffering caused by change. That's another way of putting it. Lots of different perspectives, but with the same kind of teaching, right? It's once again like seeing something from a different perspective, kind of like how light reflects dependent on the placement of the sun. It's about how we look at it, but the teaching ultimately is the same. So here
Prisms.
we go. Mm-hmm.
Viparinama.
And now another thing you might notice is that the Buddha was very logical, right? He wants us to understand the truth of existence from a systematic perspective. So first we talk about the nature of reality. Then we talk about why it is that way. How do we end it? And then the specific instructions. Does anyone have any other thoughts, questions, realizations that have come up from understanding the Four Noble Truths thus far? I'm curious if anything's coming up for you, Sasha. I believe you are muted.
It's a lot simpler than I would have thought. That's what I'm feeling mainly. Yeah, we overcomplicate things a lot. The brain overcomplicates things.
Yeah. Amen to that. Isn't that true? Yeah, life is suffering. There's a way to stop the suffering, and here is it exactly. Super simple. And yet, in our day to day lives, we suffer quite a lot by complicating things. So, thank you for sharing that reflection. That's why I think a lot of people, when they encounter the Four Noble Truths, they feel relieved. It's like finally someone is speaking to how things are. Oh, there's a way out. Oh, great. Right? We can actually relax in the simplicity and the teachings that have already been laid out for us by someone that has become enlightened in the first place. And so we follow that path. And since we've been talking about the Four Noble Truths, I'm curious if any of you have had a shift in the way you perceive things or in the way you approach things in general.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I would like to say something.
Yeah, Alexis, please do.
One, sorry for the delay. My internet's been really bad. I feel as though my shift came in, I would say, in just kind of learning to not have so much control over everything. I think that it's kind of letting the ego die a little bit for me in knowing that sometimes things just happen and you can't control everything. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything is your fault. And kind of like what we talked about last week, when you take the you out of certain things, like everything's happening to me, and kind of changing it to for me, everything is happening for me, and just kind of allowing the universe and nature to take its course with some things, I think it's allowed me to not have such a strong hold on the things that lead my life. And conversations that I've had with friends and family, and just talking about like Thanksgiving, and sometimes not always seeing eye to eye with people, or clinging to what we feel like people should be to us, and just kind of leaving the door open to love them, but understand that change happens. And it kind of makes me think of the laws of just like clinging to things that we want. You may want someone to be more present in your life. You may want certain things to go a certain way, but life sometimes happens that way. And it doesn't make you less of a person because things haven't happened the way that you wanted, but more so just that maybe it's not time for it right now. And that you might still have to learn a few things before you get to a certain point with someone, or experience a certain goal in your life. So I think in just kind of being more patient and just allowing things to be, and returning the same energy that I would give to a person or to something back to myself. A lot of times when we don't reach the goals that we seek in life, we tend to, like, or at least me, I tend to turn it into self-hate. And I'm learning how to just transform that energy of neglect or whatever I've lost back into myself. I think in being in the program and learning about the steps of things sometimes just happen. It's helped me shift my perspective of what it means to succeed, but also to give effort to something, if that makes sense. I was kind of all over the place.
Oh, I thought that was a beautiful share. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Alexis. There's so much in there. But yeah, would you like to share a little bit more about what you just said at the end? I would love to hear.
Um, I I've been talking to a lot of my friends, and as you know, around this time of year, it can be a little ugly. You know, maybe you didn't get everything that you would like to get people, or maybe you don't have the job you want. Um, and just kind of remembering that you're still gonna be here, no matter like what's going on. You know, no matter what everyone else has. Like things are temporary, and I think when you kind of like we understand that when we lose it, like, oh, you know, it was nice while I had this thing, or it was nice to have this idea, and we kind of just throw it away. But just shifting that energy, like I guess feeling is currency. I guess the easiest way to say it is feelings are currency, and we put so much effort into people and objects and things, and then when we don't get that investment back, we feel empty. And I'm learning that sometimes we have to shift that direction. You know, sometimes it's not for us, and we may get something better in return. Maybe that person wasn't for us. Maybe that job wasn't for us. Or, you know, sometimes the universe will align us into different realms to maybe, I feel like my words are all over the place, but I guess going back to what I said earlier, just realizing that sometimes your investment has to go elsewhere. And I shared this with someone earlier about my dad. I guess this is the easiest way for me. I know I'm in a safe space. I know it's kind of hard for me, but I know I'm in a safe space. So I don't have the best relationship with my dad. I want my dad to be what I would like him to be, supportive and different things like that. And I put so much energy into wanting that love back. And being that I want him to be this thing, you start to wonder what's wrong with you. And being that my dad is a part of me, I told someone, the parts of me that wanted him to be in my life and that I recognized within myself, it caused me to start to turn that hate to myself, like what's wrong with me, and, you know, just thinking terrible things. And I realized the same love and the same space that I hold for my father to be more present in my life, I have to give that same grace to myself. The same pieces of me that I see in him that made me feel insecure, I have to nurture that. I have to give that love right back. I feel like I always have that love for him, but I have to give it back to myself. And loving myself is in loving him. So I feel like we can all find things that we may want to fill voids with, you know, whether it's people, objects. And whenever we don't get those things, we have to learn how to not self-hate ourselves for not obtaining that thing or that person. We have to give that love back to ourselves. Just pouring back into our own cups, if that makes sense at all.
Oh, you're making the clearest of sense, my dear. I think
Thank
all of
you.
us are feeling really enlivened and inspired by your share. So thank you, Alexis. I really
Thank you.
I want to highlight a few things, some dear gems. I mean, Sasha has her hands in prayer, you know, like, okay, take us to church, baby.
I
Yeah,
can't see you guys. I'm in the call in.
yeah, that's why I'm describing so that you can see with your mind the love that we're feeling for you in your share. I want to highlight a few things. One thing that you shared is that like life is happening for us. It's not happening to us. And it's a matter of shifting our perspective. Another thing you shared is like thinking about our energy as investments. Are we going to invest in things that continues to bring suffering in our lives, that add meaning of like self-deprecation and all these other negative forms? Or do we want to invest our energy into clearing our mind, training our mind, loving ourselves to create a new reality? And then with that perspective, everything is happening for us in perfect arrangement for our self-realization, only with the right perspective. And so you're sharing all these nuggets of wisdom with us that I think are like a true testament of like the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Another thing that's coming up for me is just like, yeah, all the ways that language can also impact things, right? And show our level of consciousness. We can either be victims or we can be responsible and our own freedom makers. So something that you mentioned, since you said things are not happening to me, but for me, another thing I will mention is that we don't have to do anything. We get to. We get to heal our karma. We get to love ourselves again. We get to remember our true nature. We get to become enlightened. It is all a privilege, tying us to another lecture of ours, which is this precious human birth. So Alexis, thank you. Thank you so much again for sharing. And thank you everyone for joining us today on this call.
Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
So we are just 2 minutes over our time, but before we end, I would love to hear from everyone a short, a word or a short phrase, a nugget of wisdom that you're taking with you from this call. Who would like to begin?
I'll start. Love yourself by loving others.
Yo, I think just as much as you attach, you can let go.
Thank you, Christine. Sasha or Alexis?
I'll go if it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
One that's short that I always say in times of doubt, or just a good self-care mantra: I am the garden and the gardener. And
Okay.
it's just remembering to pour into yourself.
Okay, Alexis. I see you. I'm taking this class with you, girl.
Thank you.
Sasha, any thoughts, realizations?
I'm really happy to be here, actually. And well, I was scared to do it before, but I thought it's better for me and to just go out there. I mean, just put myself out there and do it. And I have a lot of things I want to say. I just can't decide. But I'm remembering that I actually chose to be here alive in this life, and I actually chose my parents and my purpose and my lessons and everything. And I think that's that's why I'm doing this, is to remember and do what I came here to do. So I kind of lost it, but
Hey, we're right there with you. Thank you so much, Sasha. I really appreciate your share, and thank you everyone for joining us today on Mindful Mondays. Let's keep the conversation going in the WhatsApp, in the school, whatever comes up, please share with us. And until next time, we'll see you Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you guys.
Love
Be
you.
safe.
Bye, guys.
Love, love, love.
Bye, love y'all.
Love and light, y'all.